Ramsey looking to end this inning. The 0-2. Breaking ball swung on. A floater goes into shallow right field. That falls for a base hit and will add to the Birmingham lead. Farrell scores on the RBI single by Luis Sierra. Barons now on top of the Suns 5-1. We're in the top of the ninth. Then the ball. Now something's getting interesting. Matt Ramsey's getting into it with Jeremy Farrell, and now both benches are clearing. And now Andy Barquette's trying to break it up. Here comes everybody onto the field. Ramsey went right over to Farrell. Those two started getting into it immediately. And then it was trying to be broken up. Wilfredo Jimenez was also one of the aggressors there, as we have the benches clearing in Jacksonville. Both the Barons and the Suns, and quite a scrum, and umpires are starting to separate all of that. Fans are also throwing some tennis balls, but they don't need to do that. Make sure if you're listening, hold on to those, as Barons are still angry. Chris Curley's getting into it, having been restrained. Julio Venus, Andy Barquette trying to separate everyone, trying to keep everything just very calm. Credit the managers, Venus and Barquette, trying to separate that as much as they can. The Barons have made it a 5-1 game thanks to the RBI single by Sierra, but now much more has happened than that. Matt Ramsey really took offense to something that happened with Farrell. We'll have to try and see on video again what happened. As three umpires are talking, they likely have some ejections to hand down. You kind of had the feeling something was going to happen. We've seen a lot of hit batters tonight. These have been emotional, long games. You just kind of had the sense that tempers were about to flare between these two ball clubs that have played an exhausting series. Here's what happened. Farrell scored on the RBI single. Ramsey was right there backing up home plate. Farrell ran into Ramsey. Ramsey took offense to that, gave Farrell a long stare, and the two exchanged words, and that's what started this whole almost melee. There weren't too many punches thrown, it didn't appear, but benches did clear. There was a lot of pushing, a lot of shoving, as Farrell ran right into Ramsey. So it looks like the main aggressor on that was Jeremy Farrell. He didn't need to run into Ramsey. Ramsey was just trying to back up home plates. As the umpires have now talked, they're all going to go to Andy Barquette first. Barquette is going to tell Matt McCoy, it appears to be the main one talking. And if Andy gets any more animated, it probably means that Ramsey's been ejected from the game. And really there, you can almost see a need maybe that Farrell and Ramsey should be ejected.
And I think at that point, it's at least the two main people who were involved in it all, and the rest of the way is just kind of guys who were mostly, from what it looked like, mostly trying to break it up and make sure it didn't escalate any further than it already was. That would certainly be a move that would definitely make sense, and I think there's at least accountability on both ends.
And really the main action looked like Farrell running into Ramsey. Ramsey looked like he was trying to back up a throw to home plate if that were to be the case, because Ramsey was just basically standing there, and then Farrell ran into him, kind of shoved him away. And then it was the words after that that really got into it. And now Andy Barquette's getting even more animated as he talks to the triumvirate of umpires, and especially Matt McCoy, as these two are really not seeing eye to eye on whatever the umpires have decided to do in terms of ejections or whatever the case may be. Austin Barnes, catcher, is now going to walk out. All the Suns infielders are in a clump right behind second base, except for Wilfredo Jimenez and Austin Barnes. As Barquette still is frustrated. Barons lead 5-1. We're in the top of the ninth inning. As tempers have flared in Jacksonville, we've had benches clear. First time this season that's happened with the Jacksonville Suns. We only came close to it once last year, the benches clearing, as Barquette is still upset at Matt McCoy. So I guess you could call it a brawl, but again, not many punches were thrown. It was just a lot of pushing and shoving and a lot of anger between Farrell and Ramsey. And that led to just some other little skirmishes along the way. 5-1 Barons lead. Barquette still arguing with McCoy. At some point, the umpire is going to have to probably talk to Venus, you would imagine. I don't know how you can't eject Jeremy Farrell. He was just involved in it too much. Barquette still arguing his point with Matt McCoy as these two are going back and forth. Back and forth. So odd to see all the Suns infielders at second base. Now the lone one is going to be Austin Barnes behind the plate. He looks lonely almost.
Yeah, Wilfredo Jimenez was off by himself for a while, but now he joined the party.
Barquette still being animated in his argument with Matt McCoy. One situation you'd hate to see is if the managers would be ejected here. Both Andy Barquette and Julio Vinas really played peacemakers in this whole thing. They were right up against each other, trying to separate. Again, the main two involved. Would still like to see more replays on MILB.TV of the actual brawl. As tempers have flared in Jacksonville on this last game that the Barons and Suns will play against each other this season. Only other potential would be if the Barons win the second half, Suns win the second half for the wild card, and then eventually meet in the championship series. Through some lip reading on one camera angle of Andy, I could just see him say, "That doesn't make any sense to me." So, obviously, some ejections happen, some decisions been made that affects Jacksonville in a negative way, and in a way that Andy Barquette does not seem fair. Otherwise, he would not still be arguing. As he continues his talk with McCoy, and he's just saying, I think, basically that Ramsey was backing up the play, and then Farrell ran into him. That's certainly from what the replay happened looked like. I didn't see the initial contact at first. It was more looking at Sierra on his single and looking at the baseball, but Farrell and Ramsey got into it. Farrell collided with Ramsey, and there's Andy Barquette being ejected by Matt McCoy. And the argument went on very long, and now you'll see Andy probably get into it much more. This has been a crew that has been one of the better crews in the league. Matt McCoy has been one of the better umpires in the league last few years, but Andy certainly doesn't agree with the verdict that they've come to. Matt Ramsey's now back on top of the mound. He's going to throw, but you really have to wonder if he's still in the game. We have no indication of that just yet. We're in the top of the ninth inning. Barons do lead 5-1 as the benches have cleared. And what has been a wild top of the ninth inning as the Barons have added to their lead with 2 outs. Barquette's been ejected, we know that. Now we're going to see Julio Vinas, and there's Andy Barquette throwing his cap. That almost hit Ryan Addison, home plate umpire. Barquette tossed his cap back onto the field, and he's going to leave it there as it sits along, and Barquette's throwing the baseballs on the field. Now Barquette's throwing more baseballs on the field. The fans are standing behind their skipper, Andy Barquette, as Matt Ramsey, it looks like, has been ejected. Andy Barquette now coming out. As he's already been tossed, Matt Ramsey, it looks like, has been ejected. As now all the Suns, they may not allow Ramsey to leave, and now Ramsey is going to be drugged by Barquette's to the dugout, and Barquette's still giving it to all 3 of these umpires. Ramsey throws the baseball away. Barquette now saying everything he can to the Barons dugout. The Barons are jawing back at Barquette. McCoy is trying to keep the Barons calm. And the umpires, no matter what's happened here, they've lost all control of this game as the Barons look like they want to go after it again. Wilfredo Jimenez is running. Now Jimenez is charging the Barons dugout. Here comes Wilfredo. Now we're going to see a big brawl open up once again. The Barons and Suns going back at it in Jacksonville. A melee on the field. Still a scrum occurring here. Wilfredo Jimenez now. Josh Richmond getting into it. He just lost his cap. Wilfredo Jimenez still trying to say his piece as the umpires and now some law enforcement are on the field. Security guards are on the field trying to separate the Suns and Barons once again. Barquette really gave it to the Barons as he was making his way off the field. They were giving it back to him, just jawing back and forth. And now the scrum has been separated again. Mercy. You've got some angry Suns, you've got some angry Barons, and you have to wonder if this thing will be able to get calmed down at all. Matt Ramsey and Andy Barquette, it looked like, have been ejected. We haven't seen an indication whether or not Jeremy Farrell has or not, as the Suns are starting to make their way, but you get the feeling that there's almost going to be at least one more skirmish before this is done. John Duffy, Julio Vinas starting to go at it. Now John Duffy and Julio Vinas having to be separated by Matt McCoy. Greg Napo trying to move John Duffy back. Duffy is starting to backpedal a bit. Now he'll talk to McCoy. Andy Barquette's actually still on the field as he's talking with Julio Vinas. He's been ejected, and we also know Matt Ramsey has been ejected as well. And this thing is trying to end. Tempers flaring big time in Duval County tonight as the Suns are going to get a great ovation from their fans. I don't think this is over. The Barons still have to pitch to the Suns in the bottom of the ninth, and now the umpire's going to decide again who to eject this time. You would think Wilfredo Jimenez.
You would absolutely have to think so.
He was the one, he charged right at the Barons' dugout.
A dead sprint right there. He made a beeline to the dugout.
Well, now the Bat Boys, manager Ray Foote, his staff, also some stadium operations workers for the Suns, are having to clear all the baseballs that were thrown on the field by Barquette. Some fans have thrown some tennis balls. This thing has gotten just out of hand. And if you're the umpires, that's on you to keep it under control, no matter how big the tempers flare. But they haven't. Matt McCoy, crew chief of the staff, Ryan Addison, Jose Esteras, lost control and maybe in one way let Andy Barquette argue for too long.
It took too long to quell that first argument. It should not have gone on that long, but granted, one way or another it did. It allowed Andy Barquette to get a lot of things in. Whatever he said, we can't quite tell. We cannot hear from up here. I'm not a professional lip reader. But there's so much action going on, it really is tough for us to see every little skirmish that's happened. We're trying to use video as much as we can with MILB.TV, but it has just been goofy tonight. And again, the Suns, really with Andy Barquette as manager, very few times that the bench is clear. But it has tonight. First skirmish got a little testy, both. It was mainly Matt Ramsey getting into it with Jeremy Farrell. When Farrell ran into him, those two exchanged words, and that led to the first benches clearing incident of the night. But then the second time, after Andy Barquette had been ejected, threw some baseballs on the field. Barquette kept yelling at the Barons kept yelling at him, and finally Wilfredo Jimenez had enough as he charged the Barons' dugout. And hard to tell which Baron was really the instigator of that, but certainly Jimenez came charging. He's still on the field. Barquette had to pull Matt Ramsey off field. Barquette's been ejected, but he is still standing red-faced in the Suns' dugout. Now we're going to see John Duffy and Kevin Randall, the other two coaches, along with third base coach Rich Arena. Kevin Randall is essentially the acting manager whenever Andy Barquette gets ejected. That's his role as hitting coach of the ball club. And now whatever they told him is fine. John Duffy now having a word. John Duffy's mainly just heading to the bullpen as a new pitcher is going to have to get warm. The delay apparently started at 9:40, so we're at 9:53 p.m. Eastern time. Since then, 13 minutes have passed in this delay. As Duffy will not speak with Venus, it'll be Venus now speaking with the umpires. The only question is, will Kevin Randall join that or not? It looks like he's joining the Suns infield, and Wilfredo Jimenez has been ejected as Ryan Rieger will come out. Jimenez will have to be taken off the field. So at this point, from what we can tell, Ramsey, Jimenez, Barquette all ejected for the Suns. It's hard to tell yet who's been ejected for the Barons because they've been in the dugout the entire time. The fans are giving Wilfredo Jimenez a good ovation. He stood up for the Jacksonville Suns tonight, as we have had quite a fracas here at Bragan Field. And now Julio Venus is getting animated as he argues with Matt McCoy. Could this set off another explosion? You would have to think Venus has been ejected. Or that's what we first thought with Andy Barquette. It looks like Venus is staying in. I think in a situation like this, both he and Barquette should be ejected because, just to make it equal. It absolutely makes sense. Exactly what they did initially. You don't want to have some sort of, an odd amount of people being ejected from either side because both parties are responsible here, but at least that's not the way it appears as of just yet.
Well, it's always tough for the umpires in ejection situations, brawl situations, to let the press box know, and it's tough even in the major league level, too. Sometimes you'll see them phone in what's gone on in the field, but it's really tough, and Venus has motioned to his dugout. I think he's motioning that somebody has to go back to the clubhouse. That's what it looks like here. As Josh Richmond was in in the second skirmish, he had a really big fight as he was on the field punching against another Jacksonville Sun. Well, we are going to get a new pitcher in what has been as wild a ninth inning as we've seen this year. Ryan Rieger is the new first baseman for Jacksonville. We will have a new pitcher come in as Venus and Matt McCoy are getting into it again down the first base line. Listen to this. 5-1 Barons lead. We're in the top of the ninth inning. If you're just joining us, we've had a benches clearing brawl on 2 occasions tonight. Manager Andy Barquette, pitcher Matt Ramsey, first baseman Wilfredo Jimenez, we know have been ejected for the Suns. It's hard to tell just yet who has been ejected from the Barons, but I have to imagine Jeremy Farrell will not come back to the field when we're in the bottom of the ninth, whenever that may be. As Venus and McCoy look like they're starting to calm down. No, wrong again, Roger, as they keep talking again. And umpires have got to get this game under control. Yes, tempers flared. There was a skirmish at first, but then Andy Barquette, his argument went on way too long for what Matt McCoy should have allowed. And then Barquette got even further enraged, threw baseballs on the field, took Matt Ramsey, grabbed him by the collar, took him off the field, and that's when the Barons and Suns got into it once again, and now looks like some order may be restored here. 5-1, we're in the top of the ninth inning. There are 2 outs. Nick Whitgren will be the new Jacksonville pitcher, as Julio Venus still talks to his troops. He's looking at his lineup card still. Some Baron has been ejected, but the umpires have given no indication just yet. And it probably won't be until they take the field in the bottom of the ninth inning we're exactly sure who that will be. 5-1 Barons lead, and now
Ejections, we have Barquette, Ramsey, and Jimenez. Whitgren is your new pitcher. Rieger is your new first baseman. For Birmingham, we have Early and Richmond ejected.
well, according to official scorer Jason Iliopoulos on the press box public address system, the ejections are as follows. For the Jacksonville Suns, Andy Barquette, manager, Matt Ramsey, pitcher, first baseman Wilfredo Jimenez, all ejected. For the Birmingham Barons, Michael Early, who is not in this game, he has been ejected. Josh Richmond has been ejected, their right fielder. So 2 Barons ejected. Again, Michael Early was not in the game. He was ejected, and then Richmond was ejected.